Hello everyone. Welcome to Birds of South Florida Part 1. I'd like to give you guys a heads up on some of the birds that we're likely to see when we're in Florida. I do want to point out that all of these photos are mine, but not all of them were taken in Florida. Here's a great blue heron and my nephew. These were both on the Anhinga Trail in 2015. Now, I really had a hard time focusing on exactly which bird species I wanted to cover. These two photos I also took in 2015 when I was in the Everglades. The great horned owl flying around during the day, the yellow-bellied sapsucker on the tree on the right, but neither of them are what we would call South Florida specialties. I really want to focus on birds that we're going to encounter often and maybe unfamiliar to you. So let's get started. Our first species of a group that are commonly called the mud hens. This is the American coot. Notice that this guy has a gray body and a black head. That red spot on the top there is during the breeding season, and that is atop a piece of the bill called the shield. So the males and females look alike. Here's a young one on the right that I photographed at Montezuma. We're not likely to see any young at that time of year when we're there, but I really wanted you to look at the feet. Not only are the feet large, but they're lobed. Lobed instead of webbed. So when you look at each toe there, you see that it has fleshy projections on it to help him swim. There's those fleshy lobes again in the water here. The key distinguishing factor, I think, for these guys is that cone-shaped white beak and then the gray body with the jet black head on top of it. Even in poor light, you should be able to see the difference in color between the head and the body. Common gallinule is about the same size, about the same body configuration there. Notice that his shield is reddish or orange, almost a candy corn bill there, and then a nice white stripe down the side of the body, and white on the back end should help distinguish this. Common gallinules, if you have an older bird book, will be called common moorhens, but they've been split from that species. Moorhens are Old World, and the common gallinule is found here in North America. And one of the best birds that we're going to see on the whole trip is the purple gallinule. This is a southern specialty. Look how gorgeous this bird is. Looks very much like the other gallinule, except enhanced. So you see all those bright colors. Look at those giant feet that it has for walking on top of the lily pads. This is an adult, and they're just absolutely amazing. They're fun to watch, fun to photograph. This should be a favorite for everybody. Even if we see an immature bird, I still think they're pretty enough for us to have a look at. Again, check out those big feet for walking on the water. Our last of our mud hens is the pied-billed grebe. Sorry about that. The pied-billed grebe is named after the two colors on its beak there. So you see the black and the white, that's a pied color. And this is the most common grebe that we will see on the trip, perhaps the only grebe that we'll see on the trip. They dive underwater to try to catch fish, and they are a bit duck-like, but when you look at that bill, you really should be able to tell that you're not looking at a duck. All right, another bird that you can see here in New York State during the summertime, but is also going to be common for us, is the double-crested cormorant. It does show two crests, usually just in the breeding season, so we shouldn't get to see that. But have a look at the hooked beak that this bird has. A long, slender fish-catching bill with a hook on the end of it. That's very distinctive, and also is the characteristic that's going to lead us to its identification. Here's one in flight. Even without any color characteristics, you can still see that hooked bill on the end there, and should help us with the cormorant identification. Here's that same guy that I photographed in the very first picture, and he's stretching out and he's flapping his wings to try to dry them. Both the cormorant and our next bird are often seen with their wings stretched out, trying to dry and thermoregulate. Now, if you look at this bird, you might be able to see here, I was hoping this would show up a little bit better, but it has all four of its toes webbed. That's an unusual characteristic. That is true of the pelicans as well. It's called totopalmate. Makes for some very cool looking feet. One of my best birds ever is the Anhinga. Scientific name, Anhinga anhinga. This is also called the water turkey or the snake bird. What a great bird. Can't wait to see this guy again. Here's that pose that I told you about with the cormorant. They look like they have their wings stretched out on a clothesline to dry and to thermoregulate. And here's another one here with his wings stretched out, and he's preening at the same time. Look how fuzzy those feathers look. They almost look like penguin feathers because they're so short. They are a bird that's going to dive after its food, catches fish, but it's a spear fisherman. So he's going to be underwater when he grabs a fish, bring it up on land, and have to eat it. This is on the Anhinga Trail, named after this bird. Is a female here with the brown on the neck, and that provides her with a little extra camouflage. Okay, a couple other birds that we're likely to encounter and might cause us some confusion. We have two species of vulture. Here's the turkey vulture, named after the red head like you find on a turkey. Here's a turkey vulture in flight. Notice that pattern that we see. Now the red head is often visible. It doesn't look so great in this photograph, to be honest with you, but it's still there. But what I can notice is that the head is very small. That's because it's unfeathered. It's great to be a vulture with an unfeathered head because you're always sticking your face into dead stuff and you don't want to get it all gooey and maggoty. But have a look at the dark on the body, and then I would just call them arms, which is what wings really are. And then the long feathers that come off of the arms, the wing feathers, flight feathers, they're a grayish color, making it very easy to tell a turkey vulture in flight. They also show a V shape when they're flying, which we will compare with a couple other birds in just a minute. And the second vulture, the one that you're probably not as familiar with, is the black vulture. Again, it's got that naked head, but this time it is a black head instead of a red one. Notice that hooked bill there. This is for tearing at flesh. These guys have weak feet, both the turkey and the black vulture, and they don't do any or much killing at all. Now, if you notice what they're standing on, they're on somebody's car. That's actually not all that unusual. One of the places that we're going to in the Everglades, the black vultures have learned that the rubber on the car, so the gasket around the doors or by the trunk there, you see that one bird in the back, or those little rubber pieces that stick off of your tire or the windshield wipers, they attack those because it feels like they're tearing at flesh, which is what they would normally be doing. There's only a few places where they do this. Nobody's exactly sure how they learn this behavior or why all the birds don't do it. But at this one spot, they actually provide tarps for visitors so you can cover up those cars, often rental vehicles down in Florida, and stop the turkey vultures from damaging your vehicles. Well, I probably don't need to give you an introduction to bald eagles at all, especially if we're looking at adults like the one here on the right. I just photographed him at Montezuma a few days ago. But have a look at the other picture. That's also a bald eagle. Where you're going to get tripped up on bald eagle is when you're looking at an immature. It takes approximately 5 years for a bald eagle to reach its adult plumage, that full white head and full white tail. So the 4 years leading up to that, they look all kinds of crazy. So there's lots of different white in their body and mixed and mottled. They can be confused for other things. Sometimes they look very, very dark. They have very little white that's showing at all, especially when they're perched. So a lot of people confuse immature bald eagles for lots of other things. Notice how big and wide this guy is. They're so flat when they fly compared to the turkey vulture that I said had the V shape when it flies. These guys look like a board in the air. And one thing we can confuse them with are osprey. Look at this picture right here coming head on at you. Look how flat the wings are, and they tip up just a little bit at the very end there. That could be a bit of a clue for us on osprey. But once we get to see a color pattern on this guy, we should certainly be able to tell ospreys from bald eagles, even immature bald eagles. So I want you to look at how white the belly is on the osprey and how the wings have the white going up on the inside and then the dark on the outer side of the wing, and then the feathers themselves are all banded. Banded tail, banded flight feathers. This is an osprey. Here he is with some light behind him, so it's kind of shining through the feathers. You can see the banding on them. And then there's that white body again that should really distinguish it from any immature bald eagle. If we get a few of these confused at a distance, it should clear up as they get closer. We've also got two pelican species to work with. I didn't have some great pictures of these guys, but hopefully we'll get to see them much closer, and I will rectify that. Here's a brown pelican. Brown pelicans are named after the cast of their body. It's not exactly a brown, but there's certainly browns in there. And then there's a white pelican. White pelicans are predominantly white with black on the outer edges of their wing. This is actually a Montezuma picture. That truck in the background is out on the thruway. White pelicans show up in New York once in a great while, and you should recognize those birds that it's flying with, so I won't give that away. Here are two photos that I took in South California a few years ago. The picture on the top right is both brown pelicans and white pelicans in flight at the same time. They weren't necessarily flying together, but you can see that they're pretty close in size. And then here's another white pelican a bit closer than the last one that I showed you. Okay, so who's missing? Well, all kinds of things. Few birds that you should know. If you're really interested in birds, I would say pause this video right now, write down these birds and check them out in your field guide or somehow online. Snail kite I've got in bold because that's an endangered species. Painted bunting is going to be the most beautiful bird if we get a chance to see a male there. And then all kinds of long-legged waders like herons and egrets, and that PowerPoint is coming up soon.